Hi there. This is Stephanie from the Mandorla Yoga Institute. This is a sequencing tutorial using my approach, the Mandorla method, for sequencing a class that incorporates some yin, some restorative, some vinyasa, and then some Thai massage. So one of the questions that I've been receiving from students is, once I'm done teacher training and even after I've been done it for some time, how do I sequence a class? That seems to be something that people struggle with. And I get it. I totally get it. It's something that I struggled with myself for quite some time. And what I'd like to support you in doing is shifting out of a habit that you may or may not be doing. Over the years, I've been looking at people's class plans when they turn them in for their homework, and it seems to me that one mistake that we might be making is that we're sitting down at a desk or a coffee table, kitchen table, what have you, and we're writing out a narrative using words around how I would like to see the class taught. And that alone is taking us into a certain part of the mind that may not be conducive and helpful for creativity. So what I'd like to suggest to you instead is to get on your yoga mat and think about how you're feeling physically. So for myself, in the sequence that I'm going to share here, I'm really working on my low back right now and releasing my pelvis, and in particular, the muscle that I'm wanting to work on is the quadratus lumborum. So just playing with that, if you're not as familiar with muscles, you can look up the QL, the quadratus lumborum, and use some resources and find out some yoga postures that you feel would be helpful for getting into that area. I am going to share a bunch of them with you as we draw this out. So I get on my mat and I'm aware that primary, first off, I want to release the QL. I want to get into that low part of the back and really free up my pelvis and get into some juicy postures. Also, I'm a breastfeeding mom, and so I have a lot of tension in my chest and upper shoulders and into my neck. I'm carrying around a 20-pound beautiful little girl in a car seat often, and that's really hard on your back. So that's the other thing that I want to get into. So for this practice, I'm thinking about physically how I need to get into shoulders and hips primarily. Okay, so once you've done that, think of some key poses that you would like to get into, that you would really like to sequence around. So for me, my favorite pose right now, and what I suggest is drawing stick figures. Just get rid of the words altogether and try to tap in and draw, use colors, and really tap into that part of your creative brain. So my favorite posture right now for getting into the quadratus lumborum, we come into from a side lying position. So here I'm just going to draw my little stick figure, and this is my favorite pose. So I'm going to draw this really big and put it in the center. So here, this is my little foot, okay, and this is my leg, and as we get into the torso, we're coming up, okay, and here's my arm. My hand is pressing into the floor. My other arm is going to be reaching down towards my foot, and my other leg is coming across the body with a bent knee, and I'm stepping onto the floor. And we'll add a little head to our stick figure, and you can use the nose to tell you which way the head is pointing. So in this posture, I'm rooting into my left hand, and my left leg is extended out underneath me, my right leg being across, and then I'm reaching down. And so what this does is it highlights the QL. So we're really getting into that part of the back. And I can make myself a little note there if I want, whatever it is that's helpful. And then from here, we're just going to start drawing some other images around it. And what we're creating is a free-flowing sequence, which means that this works really well with my favorite way to teach, which is with a registered group of people who come to me. In my case, I tend to work more with women, but I do a lot of private sessions with men. But in group settings, love working with women, love having heart-to-heart conversations and getting into things. And so if I have a bunch of women that are working with me for, like, say, 6 to 8 weeks, I can use this model To have flexibility. So it's not like the set class plan that every single class I have to recreate that same moment. And this really gets into a yoga philosophy question because when we talk about the kleshas, so the obstacles that create suffering, one of them is ragas. And when we're aware of ragas, it's that, okay, something worked really well, it was pleasurable, and it was a success, and so now I want to recreate that. That's a pressure that we feel as yoga teachers. Sometimes we feel pressured in another way. We feel pressured that we need to entertain people and that we need to come every single week with this brand new exciting class plan. When actually what people are looking for is some continuity so that they can feel confident in their own bodies and they can say, hey, look, I already know this sequence. When the teacher says take a vinyasa or when this teacher says to go into this part of the class, I know what I'm already doing. And then that's something that they can bring home for themselves. It's more empowering that way. But going back to ragas, we don't want to try to recreate the exact same thing every time. And when we have this written out class plan that's verbatim with the exact words that I'm supposed to say, it puts us in a rut and it's not honoring or exciting for me as a teacher. It's really not honoring for my students either. We want to come into a place where we're honoring the people in the room and how they're feeling physically, emotionally, and mentally right now. So it's about creating a dialogue. Maybe you do it at the beginning of class as a group, or you do it one-on-one privately, or people just know that they can speak with you before class. And if they have nothing to say, they have nothing to say. It's really about honoring the environment and the studio or the setting that you're in as well. Okay, so right now we know this is my absolute favorite pose. I want to play from there. Where the yin component comes in is that at the beginning of the class, we're going to take about, I would say at least 20 minutes, depending on how long you have for a class, to focus on yin postures, which means each pose will be held for about 3 to 5 minutes on each side. So if you have a pose that's asymmetrical, such as this, you'll need to account that it's at least going to take up for 6 minutes. So really, in all likelihood, you'll only have the opportunity to maybe do 3 postures, 3 to 4 postures each week. And so maybe you don't do every single pose. That's the other mistake yoga teachers tend to make is we try to do every single pose, and it's kind of this pressure that we put on ourselves to get everything in. Again, teaching a yoga class is about decluttering and creating spaciousness, giving the people opportunity and yourself for silence. So we don't need to cram the class full of everything. Okay, so here's our key pose, and we can circle it if we want. You can get really creative and colorful. You can draw lines out there. But let's just keep things simple. For myself, I know another pose that I really enjoy doing that's also helpful is Janu Shirshasana. So we'll draw my little stick figure here. Make sure you can see that. And we'll draw the next little leg out there. And here's my torso. And here's my head. And there's my arms. And again, I'm going to add that little nose so that it's pointing down. Okay, so Janu Shirshasana, again, this is another stretch that's going to highlight the quadratus lumborum on the side that my leg is bent. Okay, so this is a lovely asymmetrical forward fold. So again, if we're thinking yin approach at the beginning of the class, then what we'll want to do is make sure that we have at least 6 to 10 minutes because we're doing it on both sides. So again, you can see how we're not going to do a lot of postures at the beginning. And what is yin doing? Yin's stretching the myofascia. We're not really working at the muscles at this point. We're gently coming into a posture, and it's not even good always to stretch the muscles. What we're wanting to stretch is the fascia. And if you're not familiar with that term right now, really, really simple. Fascia is like the container that holds our muscles, and it gets shortened and tight, kind of. Tight's not the appropriate word. We don't want to go into that language, but shortened. And what it feels like is the tightness that you might have at Thanksgiving dinner if you've eaten too much and your pants aren't fitting. When we release the fascia and allow it to lengthen, the muscle can then breathe and move freely. So it's a static holding of postures. Okay, I like to do this at the beginning because it gives people time to transition. It helps the fascia release, which means when we get into the other part of the class, people will have more mobility and freedom. Okay. So we have our Janu Shirshasana here. If you are a more verbal person and you want to write the word out underneath, you could certainly do that. If you want to use Sanskrit, great. If you don't, great. Another way that you could do this is you could buy some quite large index cards. I'm not doing it here because I want everybody to see what I'm doing, but you can buy some large index cards. And you could do this on an index card and then call that a class. And then you could start having a collection. And each of these index cards would be for a specific vinyasa, right? That you can then plug into another class or setting. And then you could eventually have like a little Rolodex of cards. If you're more tech savvy, you could probably think of a way to do this on your computer as well. But I'm much more the kind of person that I like to write things out and touch things with my hands. Okay, so we have Janu Shirshasana and our favorite pose here, which I apologize, I don't really have a name for this one, was just really inspired to use something that I've been using out of my massage therapy practice on the table, and how could I reinvent this on the floor, and that's where that comes from. I have seen other yoga teachers use it, so I'm clearly not the owner of this. Don't want to imply that either. Okay, so Janu Shirshasana. Another thing we had talked about is I'm wanting to get into the shoulders and pelvis. Another favorite posture of mine that I'm really enjoying is when I lie prone, so on my stomach. So here's my leg and my torso. I'm going to draw my head on the body here, and I won't draw a nose at this point because my face is down. And I'm going to draw my right arm out to the side at a right angle, so I'm laying on the floor like this. And then I'm going to draw my left arm and give it a little chaturanga arm. And so I've made like a little bend there to show that I am then pressing the hand into the floor. We'll assume then that this is my right leg that's extended, and I'm just going to take my left leg and kick it back over here with the knee bent. And so what it looks like is I'm peeling that left foot off the floor and draping it back behind me. Okay. So again, we can call this all sorts of things. This pose kind of reminds me of when you see one of those cartoons and they've drawn the outline of a person who fell from a building. Maybe we can think of something more tactful to call this, but for now that's what I think of. So I've been calling it splat pose. Anyway, so for now, for our purposes, we'll call this splat. And here we are. And what's really great about this pose is, again, this is getting into that quadratus lumborum region, and it's helping to release into the side line of fascia that connects the body, as well as the spiral line that traverses both the front and back. Okay, so we have our little person there. And then I know that another posture that feels really yummy, that gets into opening everything up, that comes well after this pose, is still lying prone. So we'll draw a little person here with the face down, bring our leg down, ta-da! And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick this leg that's up in the air forward, and I'm going to bring that leg into a right angle. So kind of like a half frog. So I'm starting to get into the adductors, which is quite nice. And I'm going to create two little chaturanga arms here, like that, to show that I'm pressing my hands into the floor. I'm also going to create an arrow like this to show some dynamic movement, because I want to move the spine and create some mobility through the vertebra. Okay, still no nose because my face is pointing forward in this scenario. Okay, fabulous. Another pose that feels really great that I think would work well in this group. So if you can see, what we're doing is we're creating a family of asanas that all have a similar intention. So my first intention being that I'm wanting to get into the quadratus lumborum, and I could even write in the upper corner for myself a definition of this practice. Like, this is a practice to release quadratus lumborum, pectoralis minor, and so on. So you can write from a muscle perspective. We can talk in another setting about how to talk about setting intention for emotional balancing, setting intention for mental balancing, and so on. Because I certainly do love to incorporate meditation, breath work, and mantra into my sequences. I think for now, we're just going to stick with physical body so that we can really finesse this idea of sequencing. Okay, so another posture that just would feel really, really yummy in this that I know that flows quite well is a seated twist. So we can draw that. We'll have our person's spine here. We're going to have one leg bent like so. Okay, and then the other leg's going to come up, and that foot is going to go just beyond the knee. And because we want the person twisting, maybe we can show with an arrow the direction of the twist, or you can add a double arrow to show that you'd like the person to twist both ways, have an open twist or a closed twist. Okay. We do know just from the functional anatomy and the adaptive yoga course that we want to be very mindful that we don't start a class with twisting. Right? We don't want to do this to someone until they're warmed up. So let's add the face. We're going to point the nose over that way to the left, and we'll then place our hands on the floor and so on. Okay, so here we have a twist. If you're concerned that your diagram isn't working for you, again, just write the name. So this would be a nice, simple Marichiasana. Okay. Another pose that I'm quite enjoying that I think would fit into this grouping is stomach twist. So why don't we draw another little guy lying on the floor here. Here's his spine, and here's his knee coming across the body, and then here's the arms, like so. And like so. And because the knee is going across the body to the left, we will point the nose to the right. Okay. So now I have these postures that I might not necessarily teach all of them, but I know that I want to play with them. And then when you get on your mat, play with adding that vinyasa element to the class. How can I fluidly transition from this pose? How could I play with these poses so that it's not this stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down? We want this fluid element so that you're not pulling people out of the meditative experience. Okay. So the first part of our class is more that yin approach, where we're focusing on quadratus lumborum, releasing and opening the shoulders. Let's add a few more poses to get into the back. Another really great pose, child's pose. Let's draw child's pose over here. As you can see, I'm just hopping around. I'm not trying to put everything in a linear thing. I'm not trying to organize all of the postures yet. I'm just creating a family of poses that can work together in a vinyasa, however way I choose to organize it. So here we have our child's pose. Very well drawn. Balasana, okay. And with Balasana, when we're in child's pose, I know that I can either stay forward, so now I'm starting to get into those shoulders a little bit, opening the chest. I also know that I can start to walk my hands to one side, and then I can highlight that quadratus lumborum. Okay, so we can draw ourselves a little arrow showing that we have that as an option. I don't have to do it every class, but I certainly can if I want to. Another posture that I really like is Anahatasana, which is a deep heart opener, and we tend to transition there from child's pose. So why don't we draw that out? That's where we come from child's pose and we walk our hands forward, forward, forward. The pelvis is lifted quite high, and we start to drop and lower the chin to the floor so that we're deeply stretching and opening into the shoulder girdle. Okay, this is an intense pose, so I really don't like to see teachers incorporating this too early into the class. So you can see here I've drawn the pelvis a bit higher. Here's our head, and maybe I'll just write Anahatasana just to remind myself. Okay, and you could put a little asterisk for yourself, like Maybe you have really open shoulders. I do not. But maybe you give yourself a little asterisk and remind yourself this is more of a peak pose. This is not appropriate to start in the beginning of a class. We always want to think of who am I teaching to, right? So if I have someone who has a desk job all day, or my goodness, they're like a carpenter or something, and they just really have a lot of upper body tension. Most people have upper body tension, by the way. This is not okay. Please don't put that at the beginning of a class. Warm everything up. This would come really well after we've done our splat poses, okay? Okay, another pose again that I would put in that same category is coming from this pose, rising up a bit, placing our elbows onto some blocks and walking back so that I can allow my head to fall between the shoulders. So really starting to go deep into the shoulders. And again, this is not a beginning of the class pose. So let's draw our little knees and our pelvis. And there's our elbows. And we're going to draw a nice little yoga block for ourselves and our head. Nose is pointing down. I didn't draw the nose on these ones. My apologies. Okay. So we have a nice shoulder release. We're still staying within our intention that we have set. And then is there anything else that would fit really nice in here? Nothing's coming to mind at the moment. I don't really think that I need to add too much more. I mean, we could certainly add some cat-cow pose if we wanted to. So why don't we draw that over here with our head, and we can show dynamic movement with an arrow through it. For cat-cow, we can also show dynamic movement by adding a circle with some arrows, like so. So dynamic movement. Okay. So again, we start our class. Now we have our intention. Now I have a really nice yummy card. And I can just review that card before class and think about what I'm feeling. And then as I talk to everyone and I get a feel for what's appropriate, I can just choose from this. And then this is a template that I can really work with, like I said, for a few months if I want to. So that's our opening sequence. What's really great about this approach is that after we've done some practice with yin, we can use these same families to start to create a vinyasa flow. So more of a jala namaskar, more of a water element approach. We can create a vinyasa that goes in and out of maybe 3 of these poses at the same time. Like I said earlier, we can go from this pose where we have our leg kicked back and we're bringing it up to our arm and then lying and just really starting to release the spine and opening. From there, I apologize, this must be strange because I'm not lying on the floor. I can tuck my arm underneath and then open up, and look, now I'm coming into stomach twist. Now I'm starting to open up into a twist. From stomach twist, I can then bring my arm underneath of me, press into my hand. My foot is still placed on the floor here. I don't even know if you can see me. And I can come into that other pose where I'm starting to stretch into the side body. And I will film some more sequences for this when my daughter's napping in the next little while. So you can actually see me playing with these postures, okay? And then we can use those vinyasa sequences during the middle part of the class to start getting into the muscles. And so something really important when we talk about in the teacher training is we want to move with the muscles engaged. So we're not flaccid and hanging into a posture. When we do that, it hangs into the ligaments, it causes damage, or it actually can help us go too deep into the muscle tissue, which can be detrimental for stability. So we often go into our hamstrings, for example, too deeply, and there's a lot of yoga injuries related to hamstrings because we're trying so hard to force ourselves. So we use a few different methods to protect ourselves. We want the muscle engaged. So say you are stretching the hamstrings, then you want to create a sense of traction as though you're drawing that leg back while you're coming in. And then really pay attention when the muscles engaged, you probably won't go as far into the pose. And that's great because our purpose is not to achieve or master some pose. Our purpose is to release restrictions in the body and improve mobility. Okay? All right, so during that middle part of the class, we can now start to play with these things. We can add traditional sun salutations. Maybe you want to start getting into the quadriceps, so you might start to add maybe some warrior one or maybe some gentle back bending postures, so you can really build on this using the same model. We won't do that together for the purposes of this video, but you could create a whole other card that starts to build, how do I play with this now when I get off the floor? If you noticed, this whole opening sequence, because it was mostly yin, is on the floor, seated and on the floor. So we would start to say, okay, how can I play with this with some standing sequences and some vinyasa and maybe inviting some more heat? For those of you who've done the Thai yoga massage training with me or the 500-hour training with me, you would have learned the Thai massage approach. And so that's really beautiful because after that yin opening, we do what's called a Thai yoga fusion. And then we partner everybody up in the class and we do Thai yoga massage together, working again on these same muscles. And I plan the Thai yoga massage sequence the very same way. I draw out with little stick figures. I'm drawing 2 stick figures then, the postures that I want to do with everybody. Okay? And then the last part of the class, we get into restorative yoga. Whether we did more vinyasa flow or Thai massage doesn't matter. But then we're going to add some, some restorative yoga. Okay, and with the restorative yoga, same thing again, but it's our closing sequence. So I might just choose 1 or 2 poses, 3 at the most. Usually it's just 1 or 2. And that's where I really like to get everyone draped into a posture where they can embrace relaxation and really let go of where they're holding. Have you ever gone to bed at night, you lay your head on your pillow and you feel yourself kind of above the pillow, and then you go, ah, and you feel, and you feel yourself really let go into the bed, and or when you get into a hot tub or a bathtub, same kind of thing, you feel this clenching melt. That's what we want our restorative practice to be at the end. Sometimes I do Shavasana, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's legs up the wall or some work with bolsters, but that's our time to really rest, see if there's any tension, and give it an opportunity to melt. At that point, we can cue some breathing, we can read a meditation, we can talk about something heartfelt. Not too much talking. We want people to, again, have that sense of spaciousness for themselves so that they can hear their own inner voice, not yours. Okay. Some more examples, sequencing-wise. You could do the yin part at the beginning, then vinyasa flow, and then incorporate some Thai massage at the end. You could do the yin at the beginning, then the Thai massage, and then the restorative at the end. There's a lot of opportunity. Our offerings are more women-centered programs, and so what I tend to do is have a longer class, and I like to incorporate the Thai massage in almost every class because I want to give women that opportunity to connect with each other. And sometimes it's just not comfortable to talk about how you're feeling, but just having that interaction where you're having touch with another person, you don't need to say any words. You don't need to go into the story. You're just going to feel supported. And that's really what the container that I'm wanting to provide for people. Okay. All right, this is what I wanted to share for sequencing. If you have any questions at all, you can email me at info@mandorlayoga.com. If you have more administrative questions or you're looking for upcoming training dates, you would email Shailene, and her email is calgary@mandorlayoga.com. And we have probably our next 200-hour training is coming up in October. But we also have all of our 300-hour components are offered as weekend workshops and intensives. So we have a Thai yoga massage training coming up this July that you're welcome to attend. It's in Calgary. It's for about 7 days, and we can help you with accommodations and everything so that you can fly in, get the information, and then go home. But we also offer one workshop every single month, and that is open to anybody, whether you're a yoga teacher or a massage therapist, or you just want to learn Thai massage and support your family. I will leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening, and namaste.